This podcast contains paid advertisements, but more on that later. Welcome to the O'Connor Bootstrap Podcast, where I discuss how you can grow your business by the bootstraps. This applies to all entrepreneurs, from the person just starting up to the one that is already well established. My goal is to help you grow. I am your host, Isaiah O'Connor. Okay, so today we'll be talking about innovating in your company, thinking outside the box, but don't forget your primary target market, your base, the core people that you've reached and built your business on. I've kind of talked on this a little bit before, and when I talked about think outside the box, but don't forget the box. Don't forget building up the basics of your company, building up a good team, building up good accounting practices, building up a good marketing. You have to focus on the basics. And this is very similar to that one. But this is a little bit different, where when you're developing and you're growing your business and you're innovating and you're creating new products, new services, or trying to change with the times because the product or service you used to provide is in decline. For example, there's not a whole large market right now for calculators. Yeah, you can go and buy a little pocket calculator, and they still exist. But most people just use the calculator on the phone now. Matter of fact, cell phones have replaced a lot of technology. When was the last time you saw an actual alarm clock sitting next to someone's bed instead of the phone? You can still get them, but the market's shrunk because the phone has taken over a lot of things. Matter of fact, I saw an ad, I saw a meme somewhere where it said, all these items on this Radio Shack ad are all found now on your smartphone. And it was a lot of items. It was like some 30 items, separate items, that your smartphone has now completely replaced. Which brings me into one of my core focuses on this, my prime example. Back in the early 2000s, I do believe it was, it's been a while. Yeah, early 2000s. I was working for a time at Radio Shack. Now, at the time when I started, Radio Shack had some really, I really liked their sales training, was very impressive. I was pretty impressed with that. I liked their training on their products. They really trained you on every product, all the new products you would get training on. You would go back on the computer, do a course, learn everything about the product you were selling. It was very useful, very, very helpful. Really good system. I like that. However, the Radio Shack built up its brand, especially when I was small, on a focus of parts and batteries and small electronics, cool toys for Christmas, little fun electronic toys for Christmas, and a knowledgeable staff there to help you figure out things. You would go there and they would help you fix your electronic needs. You'd have to really understand electronics. You'd have to really understand what you were talking about and be able to communicate that to the person you were talking to. I can't remember the guy's name. He was there for years and years and years, and he retired a long time ago. But there's this one guy that worked at the Radio Shack in my hometown. Every time I had an electronic need, I'd always go find the same guy for years and years and years. And I'd always go to this guy. He'd always help me out. He was a great guy. I'd always buy all my stuff from him because he knew his stuff. He was really, really good. Problem is, as the years continued, this ancient company, this old company, Radio Shack, it's been around. It was around since 1940, 1930, maybe as long as 1920. I don't remember. It's been a big while. I wasn't originally planning to talk about them, so I don't have all the details pulled up on Google right now, but I can do that later. But the point being is, this old company built up selling parts for radios and hobbyists and and CB radios. If you're old enough to remember CBs, or if you've been a trucker or somebody, that was what you had before cell phones. You had CB radios where you could talk to people a long way. You had wireless transmitters, wireless radios, like special, like long, not wireless, special wireless communication radios where you could actually, shortwave radios where you could listen to broadcasts from the other side of the world, transmit to the other side of the world. Pretty cool stuff back in the day. And this wasn't the internet. This was just direct transmissions. It was pretty cool. Long range transmission, really cool stuff, but old. We don't need these anymore because our cell phones. Matter of fact, that was one of the problems. I saw somewhere it said something like, on this page, sales ad for Radio Shack, every item, I think they were being a little hyperbolic, but every item on this page is now in your cell phone or your smartphone. And sure enough, I think there's one or two items that were not, I don't think they looked at the page all the way detailed, that were not in the cell phone. But for example, calculator, cell phone. Camera, cell phone. Computer, cell phone. It was like, this item, cell phone, this item, cell phone, this item, cell phone. So all of a sudden, a lot of the stuff they sold, little radios, CD players, tapes, cassette tapes, remember those? Floppy disk? Yeah, I'm old. I remember floppy disk, okay? All these things you could buy at Radio Shack. Now, today, you can't. Well, you can, but there's no need to. All these little things you don't need, it's all in your cell phone. How many people, go out and buy a little pocket calculator when they can have the calculator function on their phone? An app. They've got an app for that. You don't go out and buy a camera from Radio Shack because you've got a better camera on your phone now. So, yeah, it was hard for Radio Shack to innovate and change because the parts market was shrinking big time. So what are some of the things they tried to do? Well, they tried to become a big box store like Best Buy or Circuit City or one of these big giant places. They opened a few of those. That didn't work. That's not who they were. That wasn't their core target market. They were trying to innovate. It was electronics. They did sell electronics. They've always sold TVs and some computers. They sold one of the very first personal computers way back in the day. I had one of them. I think my family still has it somewhere in storage. It's a 1980s. Yeah, it's a museum piece. But they were trying really hard to come up with a way to replace the lost, parts department. Because nowadays, your cell phone breaks, you send it off to repair. You don't go and buy a new screen and pop it in yourself. I mean, you can, some people do, but you don't usually do that. There's not a lot of people buying parts for their radio anymore. You don't have a lot of people buying resistors or transistors or variable resistors or LEDs or breadboards, i.e. circuit boards for adding things. They're called breadboards, yeah. Don't ask. Anyway, there's a much smaller market for these things. And a lot of the more common things that people would still buy. Cable splitters, routers, internet cables, all that stuff you can buy at Walmart. Probably not a great place to ask for help, but you can still get a lot of this stuff at Walmart or even at another big box store that has succeeded. You can get these parts. So now Radio Shack really had a problem. They needed to really innovate and change their focus a little bit because the parts market was drying up. So big box store didn't work. So what was the next focus? This is when I was there. They decided they would stop focusing on being a parts store, and they decided they would be a phone store. Now, an electronic store selling phones makes sense. It's an electronic device. They sold phones, they sold MP3 players, they sold GPS units, they sold TVs, they sold computers. So phones are a natural part of that. Okay, great. but they wanted to be known as a cell phone store. They no longer wanted to be that knowledgeable professionals here to help you out with your technology problems. They wanted to be a cell phone store selling lots and lots and lots of cell phones. Very huge push to become a cell phone store, even to the point of putting quotas on how many cell phones you had to sell. And if you didn't sell these many cell phones within a certain time frame, you would be written up. And if you sold cell phones, you could be fired. Now, I hope I don't get in trouble for that, but they are bankrupt and they're no longer doing this anymore. So, anyway, they want to be cell phone stores. Sell cell phones. People would call, people would come in, the store, and they'd have a cell phone, and you try to talk them into an upgrade or switching service and hound them all the time on cell phone. The problem was in trying to innovate and move with the times, which is very important to do. You do need to be able to pivot. You do need to be able to innovate and change, especially if your product and or service is starting to become obsolete or maybe less specialized. Parts, no longer go to Radio Shack to get parts. You can get all your parts at Walmart too. Less specialization, more competition. You have to innovate. You have to get people to come back. You have to differentiate yourself. But the problem was, as I was so emphasizing, they wanted to become a cell phone store so badly, they completely forgot their target core base that they built the company up on, which was parts and cool electronic stuff and well-trained people that could help you through your technology problems. That's what I grew up loving Radio Shack for, because they were well-trained people that knew technology, that could help you with your technology problems. And they had the parts and such that you needed for cool stuff like science projects, wires, switches, all these cool stuff. So we had customers coming in and they would complain, I used to be able to get these parts here, but I can't. I worked at one that was pretty close to a kind of a technical school, so they had a lot more products. We sold a lot more parts because we had a school that used these parts all the time. I sold a lot of parts in this area, but the main focus was no longer on parts. It was no longer on service of electronics. It was no longer focused on, we're the friendly guys to help you out, to help teach you your technology, to help you understand it, to help you fix it, to get you the parts you need. We still had some parts, but the parts area shrunk, understandably so, over time. But the commercials stopped focusing on being the guys that could help you out and having parts as well to help you with parts. Now, understandably, people don't fix electronics these days. They either send them off for repair if it's expensive, iPod, smartphone, whatever, or they throw it away. It's kind of where we're at. So yeah, I can understand not having a huge amount of parts in stock for these types of things. But I've always wondered, I wonder if there's a way to keep that market, to grow that parts, and maybe expand more. And they tried a little bit computer parts a little bit, but they tried adding a line of computer mods to modular computer stuff like liquid cooling systems, extra fans for people who do gaming computers and modifications. So that was kind of cool. We didn't sell a lot because I think it was bad demographics for that market where they were doing the test run. There was not a lot of young people modding computers. There was a lot of retirees not modding computers. It was not the right demographics for our store, but they tried. But I think there might have been, maybe more focus on accessories for phones, accessories for computers, computer parts. Again, keeping the parts, focusing on kid science projects, for example, basic electronics. How can we teach? How you can get your kids interested in electronics, stuff like that. And there was some of that, some robotics competitions, and I mean they were doing some of that, but they didn't really push it. It wasn't a big focus. They weren't asking us in the store to push these items. They wanted to innovate. They saw a lot of money in cell phones. That's where they wanted to innovate. And they started focusing so much on being a cell phone company. People were getting sick and tired of every time they walked into the Radio Shack to buy a part. Do you want a phone? Do you need an upgrade? Do you want to change your service? Do you need an upgrade? Do you need a new phone? People were getting tired of it. People stopped shopping there for phones. People stopped going there because they didn't want to be bugged about a cell phone when they just needed a fuse for their TV or for their car. They didn't want to walk in to buy some printer and get badgered about phones. Radio Shack was not a phone company. It wasn't known to be a phone company. It was not a phone store. It was an electronics store that sold phones, but that's not what it was known for. That's not why people went to Radio Shack. And if you went to Radio Shack and you had a phone and you wanted it fixed, or you could go there and go to a repair shop or whatever. Yeah, it was okay that we had phones. I'm not saying Radio Shack should never have had phones, but Radio Shack was not known as a phone store. That's not what you get when you think Radio Shack. When you think Radio Shack, you think CB radios and cables and batteries and parts and regular radios and maybe some cool toys, maybe a cool little toy robot or a really cool Texas Instruments scientific calculator that you need for your school or what have you. Phones, no, not so much. People were not thinking of Radio Shack as a phone store. That was not the original target market. That was not the original base. They left their base behind. They completely ignored people complaining that they didn't stock as many parts, they didn't have the right parts for what they needed. They didn't focus on the hobbyist, which they probably should have. They didn't focus on the parents with kids trying to teach them about cool stuff. I think there was a market for that if they had focused on it. They didn't focus on making sure that the salespeople were highly trained and knew electronics. I mean, we were taught enough usually about the stuff. Like I said, they had a pretty decent training program. But even my time there, the training level went downhill because they weren't so worried about training to sell parts as much as training to sell phones. When I went there, and I heard it was even easier than the previous generation, and that was the dreaded parts test. I can't remember how long it was, but it was the longest, hardest test. You had to know what every part did, or at least the basics of it, what a resistor was, what a transistor was, what a variable resistor was, all this. You had to learn all these, and then you have to remember the SKU number. You had to remember what series was batteries, what series was resistors, what series was transistors, what series was fuses. You have to remember every single part. I mean, it was a lot. And then after I did it, and it was like this, big, huge, several hours long, took you 3 or 4 days to get through it, read through it, to take it, to pass it. It was hard. You had a separate manual. It wasn't just on the computer. You had a manual you could take home and read through. It was big. All the rest were on the computer. Then before I left, it had been cut down to just like an hour test on computer. I mean, they cut it down drastically. Just the basics, not really covering all the details of it. Understandable, probably realized they didn't really need to memorize the SKU numbers, which is a large part of the test, but still they cut it way down because it was not as important that people knew what the parts did as much as they wanted to sell phones. Again, this was, I left about a year and a half or 2 years later, they shut down. And I know this was a contributing factor. I watched the sales numbers going down. We had a good team. Our sales numbers were pretty good and solid and going up and down, but usually up. But I kind of saw, the writing on the wall before I left of how bad things were getting. And I saw it coming, being inside there. Matter of fact, this is just one part of it. I could go on to other things. But I think this was a major contributing factor to their downfall. perhaps I will start doing an analysis and my breakdown of why businesses have gone bankrupt. I'll start going through major companies, look at what they did right, look what they did wrong, and just give my opinion on what was some of the main causes of their downfall. And again, going back to Radio Shack, they changed their target market so completely that they completely forgot their customer base. They stepped off the basement that they built and the house collapsed. That was, I think, one of the biggest contributing factors. If not the biggest, but one of the big contributing factors. They were trying too hard to do too many different things while still forgetting their core base of loyal customers that they had for years. They were slowly pushing them out, trying to chase different areas, different products. Yeah, I could go on about all the things I saw that were missteps and, trying to save the company, things that backfired, things that worked, things that didn't work. And I do have a lot of great things to say about the company. I did like a lot of the ways they handled things. I liked a lot of their training, their sales training, their hiring training was really, really great. But again, I was watching the business change focus, and as they changed focus, they missed their target market. They forgot the people that got them there. They forgot their niche that they built up on. And that's what I think was, if not one of the biggest factors, at least one of the final nails in the coffin. When people started going in there and only hearing about phones, I saw review after review after review. They won't stop bugging me about my phone. I don't like going there anymore. They're always talking about my phone. They're hounding me about my phone. I don't like it that they're worried about my phone. It was driving the customers away because that's not why customers would go in there. So when you're innovating, you need to innovate. Radio Shack obviously was in desperate need to innovate because they were no longer selling a lot of transistors or resistors or LEDs or breadboards or for projects or, there's not a lot of people rebuilding, parts for their computer from scratch or, that stuff. That's not happening. We used to sell etching solutions so you could etch your own motherboard, your own circuit board. You could etch it. I mean, that's how type of detail we used to sell. But when I left, it was only two containers of the stuff in our store we had, and there was a total, I think, when I looked in the nationwide inventory, like 5 of them total, and one store needed to order it from us, and we had to ship it to another store, 200 miles away because they didn't have any, and we had the last batch. I mean, they had it in stock because we sold a lot, but now people don't. So you do need to innovate. That's another one. You need to innovate. You need to change with the times. You can't do what you've always done. Little side note on that, and I'll go into this later. Come find out, Hershey's, for the longest time, never ran ads. They would send salesmen into stores and sell the candy bars straight to stores for resale. They never ran any marketing. They had no marketing department. That's it. Nothing. They never changed. When people came into Hershey's and looked at it, it was so much they hadn't changed for decades upon decades. It was all the same, and they never changed, and they never innovated, and they were losing market share because they weren't changing or innovating at all. They were still stuck with the same company that Milton Hershey left when he died. More or less, it froze in time with his death for quite some time. They didn't really change much after he died. It was pretty much the same company for years, and almost was starting to lose market share and struggling to survive because of that. Amazing stuff. A failure to innovate can be just as bad as innovating and forgetting people. But so right now, that's a whole nother podcast. I don't have time right now to jump into that one. But innovate, yes, but innovate with your core market. Don't forget the people that got you there. How can I innovate the parts industry? How can I innovate? How can I focus? How can I make sure these people feel still loved and heard and build on that, even if I have to change things around a little bit. Um, anyway, so innovate. Don't forget the people that got you there. I've rambled way too long today. You have a great day. Oh, by the way, a little research would have been great to help them innovate. Maybe researching the target market, researching what people wanted in their industry, doing that research, like I said. Now, I say that because today's sponsor is us, Atheoz.com, and our new offering, I can call it the Bootstrap Business Research. I can't remember. Oh, yeah, it's called the 5 Forces Plus Research Package. It's $1,000. What you'll get with that is I will research for you the Michael Porter's 5 Forces, all the marketing forces in there. You can go back to that podcast and look it up if you want. And I will also examine the barriers to entry. Are they high? Are they low in your industry that you're on getting into, or the one you are into? You know, what the competitive forces look like, what the competitive market is like, who's your competitors, who's the people that can possibly replace, your supply chain, all that 5 forces stuff. And then I will do some demographic research of your target market location, unless, of course, it's online. But if you have a physical store or a physical service area, I can do demographic research, see where the neighborhoods where your product or service will probably do best in, or people that will have the most expendable income to buy your item if it's a more high-end item, or if it's a lower-end item, perhaps where the best neighborhood to launch that is. I will dig into that to a degree. I will also dig into social media, what type of presence your industry has in social media. Are there any social media groups to get help from, to bounce ideas off of, to support you? Is there no social media groups? Is there people selling this on social media? Is this, this type of thing? I will see if there's any social media presence and what type of presence your product or service is. And I will do all this stuff. I will send it to you back in a report in a PDF form. And I will work with you, and I will arrange at least half an hour to an hour's time to go through the report with you, explain it to you so that you completely understand these points. And you can use that to help grow your business or start a business. If you haven't started a business, it's great. If you want to grow your business and you feel stuck, this might be something that can help change where you are so you can grow and expand, or maybe even rebrand. Using this for a rebrand would be great. Anyway, you all have a great day. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. Okay, just as a reminder, we do offer a free 1/2 hour, no obligation consultation. All you need to do is go to our website and contact us through there, or you can contact me directly at my O'Connor Bootstrap podcast Facebook group, or our Atheoz.com Facebook page as well. And if you would like to support this channel, the best thing you can do, of course, is to like and share and subscribe. That helps the most. Or you can check out one of our affiliate links. And of course, I do have a PayPal and a Patreon account, and the links will be in the description below. Thank you very much. You all have a good day. You have been listening to the O'Connor Bootstrap podcast and Atheoz Business Solutions podcast. For other podcasts, past episodes, and related blogs, please check out our website at www.atheoz.com. That is www.atheoz.com or theoz.com. Until next time, I've been your friendly neighborhood entrepreneur, Isaiah O'Connor.